podcast people, welcome back to another episode of the Gardener's Shed podcast. And we've got our first Agony Uncle sort of section commenter. He did choose to remain anonymous, but in all fairness, he's a man of simple words, this bloke. So I think what I'll do is just have a little chat with you about what's been going on lately. So first off, season's going all right, if I'm being honest with you. I am choosing to, as and when that I see it, and if budget allows, I'm just trying to invest into a little bit of equipment for the gardening business if I can. I've just bought a set of Henchman ladders, the tripod style ladders. I noticed when I was searching for them, loads of different companies are doing them. It's like, I suppose the patents ran out or something, and everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. For me, I decided to stick with them because I have got a set of them, and they've been really, really good, to be fair. I'm a big bloke. I'm not afraid to admit it. There's a lot of me, and the ladders that I bought, I'm either a little bit over the weight limit or I'm skirting very close to what the professional range thingy holds. As I said, I'm a big bloke. I'm working on it. Not afraid to admit I've struggled in the past with it, but it's shifting now. Dropped a couple of stones so far, and I decided to invest in the other ones. And the reason I mention it is just to sort of add a little bit of credence to the durability of the ladders. They've been excellent. I've only ever had one time where I didn't put the front leg out as far as it should, and the front leg was a little bit lower than the back too, and it slid. But the chain, obviously it snapped too. It didn't snap the chain, but it caught, and it made it where I got a little bit of a jolt. But other than that, I've never had any moments where I've come close to thinking, I'm going to fall off here. They've been a solid purchase. So a shout out to Henchman Ladders. I will put a link into the description. This isn't a plug or a sponsored thing. It's just credit where credit's due, basically. I decided to go for the smallest ones that you do, if I'm being honest with you. You're probably thinking, well, why? Surely you won't go higher. No, the hedges I seem to be getting, and the work, in all fairness, seems to be shrinking. It seems to be getting smaller and smaller. And as such, the tool, I take my big ladders with me everywhere, but I use them, of course, but I feel like I only need to go a couple of foot higher to do the hedges. So again, instead of getting a step ladder or a platform or a step, I don't like them, if I'm being honest with you. I like the fact that you've got the 3 legs adjustable. So I decided, I'm going to go for these instead. And they've been solid so far. It's, again, iteration within the company. They almost make my set look bad. These ones are really, really a big step up. So that's 3 minutes of plugging a product. Like I said, I just think credit where credit's due. So the subject for today's video is going to be my origin story. Now, I've told it on a few podcasts, and I've told it on the YouTube channel, and I've made light of it a few times. So if you've come over from a channel, you've seen it, but I'm going to add a little bit more detail because I've got the time to do it here. And also I want to get my story down on, in air quotes, pen and paper. But I think first we'll just tackle the Agony Uncle sort of section. And the chap's just commented, he just sent on the email, YouTube gardeners. And I don't know whether that's in a positive light or a good light. My sort of stance on it is that you've got, whatever people say, you've got to take with a pinch of salt. It's like anything when there's, maybe as money's involved. I don't think I see it as much in the gardening world. I watch a lot of YouTube and, van life stuff and building stuff. And, especially with the van life stuff, there's a lot of clickbait. There's a lot of very overtly, clickbaity stuff. you do see clickbait in the YouTube UK gardening scene to an extent. And, you know, I suppose as a content creator, if that's what they have to do to make the money, because that's what it boils down, it's views at the end of the day, views equal money, you know, etc, reach. You know, my sort of take on it is, you know, I do run a YouTube channel, and I've always been upfront with the earnings off it. I aren't going to retire off what I make off my YouTube channel. I make about 30p. No, I'd say between 50, because it goes up, some days it goes up by 20p, some days it goes up by 50p. Yeah, and some people might think, oh, that's not too bad if it's running in the background. But like anything, it's time and it's effort. And, you know, when you put it on an hourly rate, I'm probably earning a few pence an hour, or, you know, for what I actually do put into it. I suppose other channels, you know, could be earning that a little bit more. Maybe it's the opinion and what we say, you know. I'm not focusing on anybody. From what I see, people genuinely do give out good advice. In my you know, if you had to ask me to really critique it, I would say that the advice I hear off most people is common sense advice. You know, it's just put in a format that, you know, people will listen to. You know, I think us as content creators, we aren't trying to reinvent the wheel, but sometimes people, you know, maybe need to be told certain things. I don't know. As I said, for me, I watch other YouTube channels with other different subjects. I genuinely think what UK gardeners are putting out, and I can only speak to UK, you know, and Ireland, you know, Mr. Tidy Garden. We put out clear and concise information. I think maybe, you know, as I said, the YouTube gardeners comment, maybe that's meant as a positive thing, and I've had positive experiences. I've met a few of them, and to me, everybody I've come across is genuine. You know, it's like anything. I suppose there's always a few bad eggs in the crowd that could ruin it, and, you know, maybe there's one chap or, you know, one lady that someone's got a chip on the shoulder and they've sorted, and it does happen. It's, you know, I've seen people where, you know, they're into van life, they do van life, but they do not watch van life YouTube because they just say it's full of clickbait. It's like, well, to an extent, but not all of them, you know. But they wrote it off as a genre, basically, maybe down to a few individuals or one individual in that community. As I said, with gardening, it's always going to be there. For me, I did a video, I think I've done a couple of quote clips, but it's always tongue-in-cheek, or to see if it boosts the algorithm, and in all fairness, it doesn't. For me, my content, I try to be as clear, you know, straight as I can with it, you know, but at the same time, I have to be careful. This is why I always caveat everything with this works for me, this might work for me, so this hasn't worked for me, this has worked for me, with the intention that you guys, you know, take a pinch of salt with what I say. As for the extreme end, bullshitting and dick swinging, like anything, it's always going to be here, it's always going to happen. You know, I can only speak from my end, you know, I try not to, you know, I do talk sometimes about, you know, not the luxuries that I have, but, you know, even like the camper van I'm sitting in, you know, it's blood, sweat and tears I've put into it. I went without, and the equipment in my container. Some people might see that as showing off, and, you know, but it's all interpretive. You know, as I said, it's very subjective. So that's my take on it. I don't believe the chap has done it to be, you know, overtly negative or, you know, anything of the sort. It's just a case that at the end of the day, you know, we've all got our own ways of doing things. We've all got our own way of, you know, expressing things. But, you know, for the most part, it's just, it is what it is, I suppose. You know, people, you got to remember, YouTube gardeners, I think YouTube is such a fantastic resource because you can literally learn about everything. And for the most part, it's free. And when I say free, it's completely free. yes, you've got to watch in a trailer. So for me, well, how YouTube monetization works is you can, and this does annoy me. It's like as a person that I watch, and he does, it's in the exterior cleaning world. He does a lot of lives, and I enjoy watching him. But there's literally an ad every 5 minutes, and it puts me off because when I'm listening to him on my headphones, I have to keep taking my phone out of my pocket to skip the ad, and it's really, really annoying, and it's put me off. And I did actually message the guy, well, not that, I commented and just not being funny about it, but you know, that's ruining the experience for me. But as a content creator, you can choose whether to put the ads in the video in the middle or at the beginning and the end, and I'm hoping I only click at the beginning, so you get, so, and I do that because I get a little bit of something for it. But well, as far as I know, there shouldn't be any during the video, because that's what annoys me, basically. So, you know, it is what it is, isn't it, guys? So, the next part that I want to talk about is my intro to into being a self-employed gardener. As I said, I've gone through it in other videos and other podcasts. But for me, I want to sort of get it down on, as I said, virtual pen and paper. Going self-employed is, some people might see it as not, some people might see it as, is and was the hardest thing I've ever done. It's, when I think about it now, it's a no-brainer. This is the thing, you only remember the really, really good and the really, really bad, don't you? So, my old job, I just think to myself, why didn't it go sooner? But to pluck up the courage to leave. So, bit of background, I used to look after holiday accommodation. Started the job, it was okay. It was a big leap for me. I used to work full-time at McDonald's. And I'm first to admit this, I fell into that job because I worked there since I left school. And I worked there throughout college, and I got comfortable. And when I left college, I didn't have much direction in my life, so I just settled for that job. I always used to do other little bits of stuff in between, but nothing substantial. And I'll be honest with you, nothing that really ever would probably mean that I would leave that job. Until I had one of the customers, and he's went on to be a really, really close friend of mine. He used to come in with his missus, and, you know, we got talking, and he actually said to me one day, I'm leaving my job, do you want my old job, basically? He said, do you want me to put your name down? And I said, yeah. I says, go on, what is it you do? And I already knew what he did, but day to day, he used to look after holiday accommodation, so in the end, I ended up getting a job. Went for the interview, the woman was overjoyed because it was up to her to find somebody, and she found somebody that the previous person recommended. She seemed to like me, all that. So I ended up getting a job, and I'll be honest with you, it was a shock to the system. You imagine working in a store where there could be 60 people and thousands of customers every day, to a job that you've, you know, in theory, and, you know, I had very little training for. So the first year of that was hard, but I got used to it, you know, got my head into it. The following years, couple of years, I did 5 years in total. They got okay, to be fair. There was no real problems. I went, in my opinion, I went above and beyond to just get that place looking as good as it could. And, I did no end to get it looking good. And it did look good. And the results showed itself, if I'm being honest with you. This isn't me bigging myself up here, by the way, but I was super proud of it. And I had it where basically the big boss come down, the owner, and the place, so when I say the place was run on a shoestring, so a bit of tea, it was run on a shoestring. There's no other way to describe it. It was the most stripped back, laid back, you know, there was no money in the place at all. So I used to make stuff out of stuff, basically. So it was an old quarry, so there was a big pile of rocks, so I put dry stone wall up around all the borders. I cut trees down, hollowed them out and turned them into plants. You know, did what I could to make it look nice. You know, dug a load of bulbs up for the woods and put them in all the borders, so at least there'll be plants. And, you know, negotiating with tree surgeons to get the chippings put down, to dropped off and then turned into mulch. You know, you name it. I tried to make the place look as nice, and it did. It looked really nice. The people used to come, you know, the people who worked at the firm, they always used to say how nice it looked. So I'll be honest with you, and with doing that, and with the place running on a shoestring, I did have a choice, but I didn't have the choice. Maybe it's me wanting it to look nice and being a sort of a semi-perfectionist. I bought equipment to help me because he had no equipment of his own, so I ended up buying a little crappy mower from one of the builders. I think like 25 quid. I bought a strimmer off Facebook Marketplace. You know, you name it, I invested in it. Just the basics to get me through. And I ended up having, you know, enough of what I needed. And then one day, the big boss come down and basically he had a right go at me, like a proper go. He was moaning about this and that, and all what he was moaning about was out of my control. But his missus was my boss, and she also looked a lot like grot bags. So in reality, you know, he was moaning at his missus, but he couldn't, so he moaned at me instead. And he had a right go, and he really, really had a go. And I'll be honest with you, I lost all sort of interest in the place. Not all of it, but I'd say the tank was down to just under half. Because I thought, you know what, I've busted a gut here. You know, and even threw that back at us because he was moaning about like the furniture and the decorating and saying that it's gone to rack and ruin. I'm like, you know, I even bought paint, you know, to basically decorate the place, if you get what I mean. So, you know, I was trying my best, but it was literally just, it wasn't seen, it wasn't appreciated, and it was, you know, like I said, that was it. So I thought, and I was talking to one of the cleaners, and I still talk to her now actually, and she was saying to me about, you know, you're buying all this equipment and you've got all this sort of stuff, and you know, what's the point behind it? And I remember saying to her, you know, this has been going on for a while, and I said, oh, I'm going to be a gardener one day. I'm going to tell him shove it, and I'm going to go and be a gardener. And then after that big argument and stuff, I said, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to, you know, put the feelers out. And so that's what I did. I put a bit, you know, spoke to friends and family and, you know, people and all that. And I started building up a little bit of a round. I started doing it on my days off. And I did that for a little bit of time, a few months. I think time-wise, I probably did it towards, I don't know, probably halfway through the year. And then towards the end of the year, I'll be honest with you, I was losing interest in it. The job had started getting better and better. Well, not better and better, as in you forgot the bollocking, you forgot the crappy conditions, you know. You just put a lot of it behind you. And I remember saying it was the start of a new year, and I'd kept a bit of the work, you know, but most of the work had finished because obviously, you know, the end of the season. I remember talking to the same cleaner, and I remember saying to her, she says, oh, you're still doing bits? I said, yeah, bits, but I said, I'll be honest with you, I'm thinking about tying and wearing, you know, just packing it in because, you know, when I'm working, I have no days off, and you know, and all this, and this place is going. And she just looked at me and she just says, "Are you an idiot?" She says, "Whatever you do, don't, because you've always got something to fall back on." And I'll be honest with you, I'm so glad that she did, because it opened my eyes and it made me think, blooming hell, you know, you're right, basically. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up staying there at the holiday place, but I ended up doing my own thing as well. And I kept it up, and I remember there was a couple of people that I let go, basically. You know, that weren't the best customers to begin with, you know, a bit unreliable, whatever. But by and large, I kept, you know, what I needed to. And what ended up happening was, like I said, I coasted for a little bit more. And I think months went by. I think it was the start of the season, or it was the start of COVID. It's like COVID. I can't remember whether it was a bit before COVID or it was during COVID, but the cleaners, you know, same lady said to me, she says, when are you going to go and all this? And I remember telling my mates about it, and my mates were like, oh, you know, you need to get out of there, all that sort of stuff. But then the pandemic happened. So this is what I mean. It took me probably 2 years to pluck the courage up to go self-employed. So the pandemic happened, the first lockdown, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to get a break, because I work in the holiday industry. The park's going to be shutting. And I remember all the talk. So, you know, I remember everything where COVID first come over. There was first cases of it. And then I think what did they do? They made it where busy areas. They dribbled it in. I remember the first lockdown. But I remember there was guests coming out the holiday site, you know, because people had cancelled their holidays, and, you know, then holidays had to be cancelled and all this sort of stuff. And then I remember thinking, I'm going to get a break here because it's COVID. But no, and I've got a feeling, I can't say it for sure, but I'm 100% that I was furloughed on the books, but I was still working, if you get what I mean. So I was put on another site, and I was cutting wood for about 3 weeks. You know, all this sort of stuff, while he could find out. And then he started putting me here, there and everywhere, doing bits of stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I just got fed up, and I got fed up, and I got fed up. And it was just shit. I was doing other gardening as well on my days off. And I'll be honest with you, I sat to myself and I thought, I'm going to go. And like I said, I put up with it a bit because it was COVID, all that. And the worst thing I did, and this isn't insult against, you know, people around me, but I told people around me, but I told the wrong people around me. I told people that their whole lives they've worked for somebody and they've been overly cautious, so they don't have to think about it. And I remember saying to them, oh, I'm going to leave, you know, no, stick where you are, it's a steady job, all that. I remember telling my friends who are self-employed and business owners and other people, and they said, go for it, do it, you know you can do it, you've got 2 days work, you know, you can get more, all this. And like I said, first lockdown, and then what ended up happening, the restrictions were ending, and I think it was August. I put my resignation, I think, sometime in August, and the park was opening up in September. And I'll be honest with you, there was 2 things that made me go then. I looked at what work I had from the gardening, and it really wasn't much, if I'm being honest with you. And you got to remember, back then I was charging an hourly rate, and I think I was charging 15 to 17.50 an hour. Shockingly enough, I still see people in my area charging that, but anyway. So I was, like I said, I was at a point where I was so fed up with the job, it was horrible, it was unbearable. I looked at my finances and I just thought to myself, well, even if I just keep these customers and this wage, I will be able to scrape by until, you know, next year. Yes, I'll go without and have to give up. You know, not give up a lot, but because my finances were really compact back then. But I could get away with it, just about get away with it. But at the back of my mind, I was always, well, I'd just get more customers, more work. And that's what I did. So in the end, I put my resignation in, and Jesus wept. For the last 3 weeks, well, I did 2 weeks notice. They tried to make me do more, but I didn't have a written contract. So when they said to me, you need to do 2 plus 5 years worth of service, that's 7 weeks. I timed it. And this was not me being petty, but I timed it where I go back off, I quit just as the park opens. And I had in the back of my mind, I don't want to be at this park when it opens, because that's going to be the first time when people come back and it's going to be hell on earth. And I just don't want it. I just didn't want it. I couldn't be arsed with it. As I said, the place owed me nothing. They, you know, done me over, done me dirty, whatever you want to say. And I just thought, I'm not having it. No matter what happens, I will not be there on the first day. Even if I have to cut an arm off, I will not be there. And in all fairness, they did say, yeah, 2 weeks is fine. It went back and forth, and then I think they tried to get heavy with me because they said they'll have to look into the contract and all this. like I said, I didn't have a written contract. You know, I signed nothing to say that I was working there. So, you know, I just said that to him. I said, I haven't got a contract with you. So, you know, anyway. So that earned me doing 2 weeks of monotonous, horrible tasks. But what can you do? But I was free, if I'm being honest with you. I was free. I'd left that place. I remember what I did was all the people I'd worked for in the past. So I knew when I was leaving. So I put newspaper adverts. I dropped business cards off. I dropped leaflets off. I did what I could because I knew that I was going to have the time to do it anyway. And also I needed the work. I was hungry for work. So, like I said, as much advertising as I could, as much, you know, work as, you know, towards it as possible. And one of the things that I did was, maybe it was psychological, I made sure my first few days, I booked in as much work as I could. I even changed people's days because I wanted to go from a full-time job. So I left my job on a Sunday and I started my gardening job on a Monday, and I made sure I was full both of them days. And yeah, that was what got me into it. It was a mix of, it wasn't that I hated my job per se. The job wasn't bad. It was, I hated working for somebody. Some people out there love the fact that they've got, you know, to me, the benefits of employment, there is benefits. It's up to somebody else to basically find your work, keep you in a wage. You've got the sick pay to an extent. You've got holiday pay. You know, you can have that time off and not, you know, feel guilty. But then I thought to myself, well, I had holiday pay, but when I had an holiday, I got called in. I got stupid phone calls. You know, I was taking a job home with me. You know, I was the on-call guy. And it was just, like I said, it was a job that was 7 days a week, 24 hours. I remember leaving the job on a Friday, because I had Wednesday, Thursday off, so I'd come back in on a Friday. But Wednesday, Thursday, guaranteed there'd be phone calls, you know, such and such need this, such and such need that. And it was just non-stop. I remember getting phone calls on my birthday, Christmas Day. I remember booking things off, telling them that I'm booking this off and I'm going to be here. And, you know, I remember saying I'm going to be away, as in not even in, you know, the vicinity. And there'd be phone calls. Oh, could you come and do this? Could you come and do that? All this sort of stuff. I remember on we had a Christmas party, phone call for that. And like I say, it doesn't sound like much, but it was constant. And just a little bit of an update on the place. So when I left, they've had 6 more handyman since I took over. They have, you know, I used to have to do everything. They've got other people doing everything. And I didn't hold any aggressive thoughts toward my boss. You know, I don't hate him. I don't despise him. I don't hate his missus who looks like Grot Bags, who was my boss. But one of the things that I do take great satisfaction in is, I think my boss, in deep down, I don't think he liked fat people. But anyway, and the thing what gives me the most joy is that me as a fat bloke, and I'm not one of them people, you know, bigging up being plus size and all that. But you've got to remember, well, you won't know him, but my boss is very black and white. You know, and he would look at me in the same as just a fat guy. And, you know, what does he see when he sees a fat guy? He's a lazy bloke, doesn't he, really? And I think some people do that. And the thing that gives me the most joy is, you know, I had, you know, like when I was leaving, my mates were like, oh, you're going to do stuff to the place. You're going to sabotage it and, you know, all this sort of stuff. Like, I did nothing. I just did my job, still did my job to the best of my ability. But the thing what got me, that gives me the most satisfaction to this day, is the fact that if somebody in their eyes, a fat bloke, you know, and he was always saying I was lazy and all this sort of stuff, but me, I did it. Now there's 2 people doing my job, And as I said, they're just constantly changing people. And, you know, and that just cheers me up, you know. As I said, I'm not, you know, a big shade and food enthusiast and all that, but that's what keeps me, you know, happy. Not happy at night, but, you know, I remember, because I speak to somebody who still works there, and they say, you know, about people starting and leaving, and to me, you know, I've got no ill feeling towards them, but I just think it just makes me chuckle. Just, you know, in their eyes, someone's useless, you know, but actually he kept the place together and he did it all by himself. You know, but it is what it is, isn't it, guys? As I said, I'm not a... This is why I don't look back at, you know, what's happened and think I wish it was different. I genuinely believe that we're all on a path. We're all on, you know, just keep moving on. If something bad happens, work your way through it, and something good will happen. Because, you know, I think as well, positive mental, you know, I'm a big believer in that, you know, positive mental attitude. I think if you think negative thoughts, you'll have negative things happen. I think if you think positive thoughts, you know, you're an optimist, you know, you're a bit more of a disposition towards having better things happen. I think as well, you're a sum of your parts. They say that you are a sum of the 5 people that you hang around or see the most. So for me, I surround myself with positive, happy people. You know, and I don't have anybody that's negative, anything like that. I get out of my life. You know, if a situation or a thing's horrible or it's negative, I get it out of my life. Don't get me wrong, you know, still negative things do happen and bad things still do happen. But, you know, it's like me, you know, running a gardening business, and you'll get bad customers, you'll get rain days, you'll get kit that breaks. You know, saying that to you, what I've just said, might make you think that you just give it up. But you've got to learn to take the suck with the, you know, the bad with the good. And I think that's a very, very hard learned lesson in this industry. It really, really is. It's something that I've, you know, learned, or had to learn, should I say. But the good thing about why I like being self-employed is that it's all in your favour, it's all in your control. You know, I don't have to work for Mrs. Such and Such, I don't have to put up with it. So that's my sort of, you know, that's how I got into this industry. I look back and I look at one of the things, and this is maybe the YouTube gardener thing, you know, here, but this is why I always caveat it, but I'm going to say it anyway. I go to my container, and, you know, I don't go to there just to stare at it, but quite often, you know, when I'm in there moving stuff around, I'll look at it and I'll have a little warm happiness in me, because there was people when I went self-employed, and I'll be honest with you, who said I'd never do it. I had a customer that said that. I had family, I had friends and friends of friends and people of people. You know, not huge, you know, like I said, I've always tried to surround myself with good people, but you still hear it, who said I wouldn't be able to do it, and you wouldn't stick it and wouldn't last it. And, you know, I think to myself, well, you know, 5 years in, it's going strong, got the container, I've got everything I own, if you get what I mean. It's not rented or on the drip. And I just think to myself, where will, you know, I be as a business owner and a self-employed gardener in another 5 years? And that's what just keeps me going every day, keeps me pushing it. So, have a good day, guys. Thank you for listening to the podcast. A little bit off subject there, but, you know, it is what it is. But this is my sort of journey. This is what got me into it. Let me know how you got into it. My email address will be in the description below. Thanks for watching another episode of the Gardener's Shed podcast, guys.